good to go.
Thank you so much, Neil, and thank you so much for everyone joining us today. I'm really excited. It's definitely one of the plus points of you know, online events like this, that we're being joined by people from all over the world. So thank you so much for giving up your time, and of course to our panelists. So this you know, this session, as you all know, because you've signed up to it, is called Female Editors: A New Frontier. And this is part of an event series called Trailblazing Women on and Off Screen. And really what we're trying to do is bring industry and education together to make sure that we change the statistics, because actually, I don't know who's aware of this, we have this wonderful panel of fantastic women in front of us here, but at the moment in the UK, the latest statistics show that 17% of editors are women, and in the US it's 21%. So this is pretty staggering, really. And these statistics haven't really been changing, but I don't want it to be depressing. The purpose of this is really for us to think about how we're going to solve this issue, and how can we make sure that this industry is welcoming for everyone, regardless of your background, and is a fantastic career for anyone who wants to go into it. But so we'll be talking about you know, the hurdles and barriers that people in our panel have managed to get through, and also things like the craft and what it means to be a female editor. So without a doubt, without holding up at things anymore, I will go over to introducing the esteemed panel. So we have Zeb. Actually, she is a freelance film and television editor. So hello, Zeb, and thank you for being here. We have Layla Blackman, who is a post-production supervisor and post-producer with experience in high-end television, feature films and documentaries. We have Holly Bordillion, who is an assistant editor working in television drama. Renee Edwards, who is a filmmaker and editor and also chair of the British Film Editors. Jasmine John, she's a first assistant editor and also founder of Black Women in Post-Production. And Stefania Marangoni, who is a senior lecturer and course director of the MA in Editing and Post-Production here at London South Bank University. And I will be chairing the event, and my name is Lucy Brown. I'm head of film and an associate professor here at London South Bank University, and also founder and director of Women in Screen and the Trailblazing Women on and Off Screen event series. So what I would like to ask our panelists to start off with really is, you know, obviously we know that statistics aren't great at the moment, but you have all managed to enter the industry and doing really well. So could you tell us what your current job role is and how you got into the post-production sector? So if I could start asking that question to Zeb, please.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Zoe Atrano. I started in 2000 as a BBC post-production, on a BBC post-production traineeship apprenticeship scheme, which I'm assuming doesn't exist anymore. That was 2 years learning everything in post. I can't honestly say I knew that much about what it meant at the time, because I was more focused on wanting to be a pop star. But I worked my way through that and became a post-production assistant and then an editor, and I've been doing that ever since, mostly working in factual and documentary, but some drama as well. And I've done promos and kids and sport and everything else along the way.
Fantastic, thank you, Zeb. And I'm doing alphabetical order at the moment for surnames. So Layla.
Hi, hello. So at the moment, I'm working on a high-end TV series for Amazon. It's a big VFX CGI number. I started working in post-production around 2000. Essentially, I did a master's at Bristol University in film production, And when I did that course, I had really wanted to get into editing, actually. I wanted to do the editing course, but I missed out on that. I did sound editing instead, not picture editing. And I did a lot of producing. And it's really interesting because where I ended up in my path, ended up in post-producing. It kind of took me into that role. So naturally worked out that I was quite good at the producing side, but really enjoyed the creative post-production side. And I started working for a producer who had a job in post, and I started working for a post producer as her assistant. And I thought, hang on a minute, this is the job for me. And very quickly transitioned into working in post. And I worked on a lot of low budget feature films, and then gradually started going into television. And I'd say my luckiest break was probably when I started working for HBO on Veep, and entered into the high-end TV world at a time when it was really starting to really starting to flourish, particularly in the UK. And I've been working in high-end TV as a post-producer pretty much ever since. So I've been doing it now for probably about, overall, it's been about 20 years in post.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Layla. And not as if everyone necessarily needs to know this, but Layla and I go back a ways. We went to university together, so they were proud to know this woman. And the next person as well is a former student of mine. So Holly Bordillion, would you like to just tell us about what you're doing at the moment and how you've got into the industry?
Yeah, so I'm currently taking a bit of a break. I'm in between. I just finished an HBO show and I'm going on to a Netflix show in a few weeks. And I started out at Creative Skill Set, which is like a trainee program that gets you into the industry, which is the godsend. It's really great. And I started that about 5 years ago, I think. And since then, it's sort of back-to-back jobs, sort of BBC, ITV, various different channels. Yeah, that's kind of how I got in.
Fantastic, thank you. And now alphabetically, we're going on to Renee.
Hi, so I am currently editing news and current affairs documentaries, 1 hours and half hours, like panorama dispatches and crime series and things. I'm also preparing a lot of proposals for films that I would like to make, to direct and produce. So I've got a slate with that. And I came into the industry, and obviously chair of the BFE, but I came into the industry after going to photography, film and television school, which was London College of Printing. I did a degree there, and I left there with the idea of directing, and I'd had done quite a bit of editing there, on video and film, a little bit of film. And then I got a job at a corporate video company. And at the corporate video company, we kind of did everything. I was assisting at first a producer who left after about 6 months, and then I got a job as producer. So we were making films for TNT and Avid and people like that. Avis, the car company. And so yes, I was doing a bit of everything. And then when I left there, I just got a lot of editing work. And somebody, a Spitfire post-production company called Spitfire, they were beta testing an Avid, and they asked me if I wanted to have a go on it, and I had a go on it and just fell in love with it. And it was one of the first ones in the country. So I was offered to work there, and I worked there for a year, and then I was headhunted by Avid and went to work with Avid for a while. And then obviously I was one of the few people who knew how to use the system at the time. So I got a lot of offers when I just wanted to go back to editing again. Worked on sort of beautiful documentary stuff on film, and a lot of youth TV, which was really brilliant fun. And then I was offered a 2-hour edit on a news and current affairs film for the BBC about the Kosovo War. And I went and worked on that, and then that was it. I stayed in news and current affairs for until now. So since 2001, I think. Freelancing all the time, and leaving to do different things. And then I left to do my own. I went and did my own film over 10 years of that, with lots of other people. We made it together, but I edited it and that took me 4 years in between jobs. And so yeah, that was it. So I've just made the follow-up to that film actually during lockdown.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Renee. And Jasmine, can you tell us about what you're doing at the moment, how you got into the industry?
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. So at the moment, I'm working on a Netflix drama. And my route in was I studied digital film production at Ravensbourne. And then I joined the Screen Skills Trainee Finder Scheme. I think very similar to Holly. I think it was Creative Skill Set back then, and it was in the process of transitioning to Screen Skills. So yeah, I joined the scheme as an edit trainee, and then my route into the industry was through that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Stefania.
So yeah, I go back a long way. I studied fine art to start with, and that's where I encountered video making, and I was doing sort of video installations. And obviously when I left university, there weren't any jobs as in making installation for a living. So I basically thought, okay, what is it that I enjoyed? And I really liked I liked narrative filmmaking, so I wanted to get into that. I went through the route of assistant director first, and then eventually decided to go for editing. And I was trained on film celluloid to start with, which was great. But like everybody knows, there's a lot of sort of messy work with that. And when the computers arrived, I was actually studying for an MA at Cardiff University in independent film production, because initially I wanted to direct. And I came across an Avid, one of the early versions of Avid. So that was it. And then when I came out of the course, I started getting myself jobs as a freelancer here and there. And then one day I was working at a community centre in Tottenham, and they asked me if I could train some of the people there. So I started getting into teaching, and it kind of snowballed from there, because I sort of realised that I had a foot on both camps, and I could actually help people get into the industry and so on. So I just kind of wanted to perfect my techniques of teaching, and it just took over. Freelancing was quite difficult at that time. I was quite new to the jobs, and I didn't really know that many people. I'm from Italy, so it was just a difficult thing to do. But, and I guess there weren't that many jobs as there are now as well. But it was difficult for me to make a living out of freelancing. So education came along, and it just seemed to fit me much better, and I enjoyed it. I ran a video lab at Goldsmiths for a while in the fine art department, bringing the knowledge to the fine art camp. And then I went to work for the London Film School, and we were post-producing, 50 films a term. Then after I left there, I went to LSPU, where I am now the MA editing in post-production course director. Yeah.
Thank you, Stefania.
And enjoying it.
Good. That's what we like to hear. Thank you. So you're obviously all doing various different things, and that's absolutely fantastic. But it'd be quite interesting to know, during your progression so far, as you're all at different career stages, what kind of barriers, if any, have you had to deal with? Would anyone like to volunteer to go first on that question? It's obviously a very big question, and everyone will have different things that they want to maybe discuss.
I'll go if no one else.
Yes, thanks, Deb.
So I guess there's been different things. At the start of my career, there was just the sort of, it always felt like there was a real boys' club, and I didn't feel like, you never know if you're imagining it, but you're probably not. And there was that feeling that people would sort of just be leapfrogging, and I'd have, guys I knew would say to me, you'll never make editor, you just don't have the right temperament. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Well, you insist on lunch breaks or whatever it was. It was just ridiculous things. And we're going back 22 years, before the MeToo movement and everything. And that sort of things were different, where I would be sitting with a group of guys who would be checking out the female runners' bums when they bent over to load up the fridge. And so there was that to sort of contend with. And if I said anything, then I would be considered sort of a bit too, you know, a bit too feisty and a little bit, you know, you've got to be careful what you say and don't hang around with the feistier women who have reputations and will never progress. And, you know, this sort of just keep your mouth shut and go along with it. I never wanted to believe that was going on. Just, you know, there was that real contradiction all the time. But facts are that's what was happening. So there was a lot of that. And then, so that was sort of early on in my career. And then later on in my career is, you know, the obvious one of I'm a parent. I've got 3 young children. And with my first one, that sort of feeling of, you know, I have to come back to work because I have to come back as soon as I can, whether I'm ready or not, because otherwise everyone, you know, I'll be forgotten. But then there's that assumption, well, you can't stay late then because you've got kids. And it's like, well, if I'm here, my day is planned, my childcare is sorted. But also if your schedules are assuming that I'm going to have to stay late every day, your schedules are wrong, fix them. You know, so that kind of, you know, or wouldn't get, if there was overtime, I wouldn't get it because it was assumed that I'd have to race home. When I'd be working with dads who'd actually be saying, I need to go. But the assumption was that they would be able to stay and I would have to leave and was therefore less reliable, and I'd lose out on jobs because they'd say, oh, this is likely to overrun and we're not sure if you'll be able to do it. And it's like, you can't say that to me because you've no idea what I've got set up in place. The fact that I'm putting myself forward means I can do it. So those kind of barriers, along with, you know, second and third child, I could make them work in my favor because I had the power and the experience and the, you know, I'd been in the game longer, but being able to sort of say, no, I can't, you're right, I won't work longer, but not just because I've got kids, but because I've got a life, or, you know, physically because I was breastfeeding and I didn't have enough bottles to express any more milk, so I'm going to have to leave the building, so put that in your schedule and work that out. But, you know, it was this kind of, so yeah, there's those sort of barriers, but I think it changes with experience and with time and the industry changing and the Me Too movement. A lot of those things I'm now able to deal with. Like I wouldn't have someone making lewd comments toward me now, but that's experience and people listen to me. So we're in a different place. So various barriers depending on where I've been over the 20 years.
Brilliant. Well, that's, you know, that's fantastic to hear that. I mean, it's interesting because I did do some research and I found that the average sort of hours that an editor works is 50 to 60 in post-production, and that's compared to an average of only 38 hours a week compared to the average person in the UK. So those hours are, you know, absolutely you know, just bonkers really. So it's hard for anyone who work-life balance. And then, you know, I guess it's, as you said then as well, just picking up on that idea that people will then assume if you've got kids that, you know, that you're not going to be able to work, this kind of idea of a celluloid ceiling, and that prevents people from progressing. So yeah, that's but it's brilliant to hear that you're fighting back and being able to overcome some of those issues there. So what about anyone else's kind of experiences? Holly, you're at a sort of different stage, as in, you know, sort of I guess sort of starting out.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same thing with the hours. I mean, I'm an assistant like Jasmine is, and our hours can be ridiculous because an editor will leave and we then have to do the export, and that then has to go to the execs and all of that stuff. But the boys club, that's just so true. I mean, you turn up and they're talking about things they presume you'd never be interested in because you're a woman, or just like, and when a man walks into an edit suite and it's you and there's another man there, their eye contact is looking at that man. They don't look you in the eye in the way they look at that man. And it's just those sort of subtle things that sort of make you feel a bit like, oh, I'm just a little bit inferior. And it's like, you know, obviously compared to what it used to be, I've heard horror stories of what it used to be like, but it's just like the general sort of slight misogyny, the fact that, oh, you won't know what cable is needed for that. Oh, you can't reach that. You won't be able to lift that speaker. Like, yeah, I can. You don't know my abilities, kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's definitely from what I've heard from other female editors who have been in the industry longer, it's definitely changing. But it's just the small things that can really grind your gears.
Fantastic, thank you. And Layla, did any of that sort of resonate what Zeb was saying as well in terms of, I know you're also a parent and sort of balancing things?
Yeah, I think so. It's a big juggle. I mean, I think it's not the only reason, but one of the things that was an additional attraction for me for working in post-production supervision is that there's a little bit more flexibility in terms of working from home, and being able to, like, you know, be there for the kids. But that being said, you know, in high-end TV episodic, you know, when it's really super busy in the busiest post-finishing stage, you know, it's crazy, and I've had to have a nanny and all kinds of different childcare solutions, which is quite stressful at times. You know, things can go wrong, things, you know, you can end up staying later than you needed to, and also childcare can fall through and all that stuff. So it's a whole added kind of extra layer. And I think a lot of mums, and my husband's very hands-on, but a lot of mums in particular are the default parent when it comes to organizing all that stuff on top of the job as well. I mean, I think I'm quite lucky in general, but I do feel like, you know, for editors who, because I'm not necessarily tied to a machine, I can go work from home, I can work on the train, I can make calls, and I can keep things moving forward and progressing. But as an editor, you know, you're pretty much tied to your Avid. I do think that with COVID, the upside of that, if you can say there is one, is the kind of blended hybrid of being able to perhaps work a little bit from home and then come into the office. I know a lot of productions set themselves up to be able to do both, to be able to react to whatever might happen on a show. So people could work from home and they could also come into London. Not every show did that, but a lot did. And it kind of opened up, I think, for people a lot of, as we all know, the possibility that it can work like that, and it can be helpful for people's work-life balance. But it was certainly something that I was quite worried about when I had my first baby, that would I be able to, how would I be able to juggle it all, and was it all going to be possible? So I just sort of dived in and just sort of hoped for the best, and it kind of worked out. But the childcare element and the commute, because, you know, a lot of us can't all afford to live in central London, so we have longish commutes to be able, you know, to live somewhere where you can have a family. It all just adds a lot of complexity to your day. So, I mean, in terms of barriers for me, just getting into the industry, I think the biggest concern for me was, would I be able to afford it? Because it seemed to be like the rich kids club. That was the biggest thing for me. And I looked at a job at I was offered a job at VTR. I don't know if anyone remembers VTR when they used to exist, as a runner. And the pay was something like $7,000 a year. And I was like, well, I can't pay the rent. I won't be able to eat. Like, how am I going to do that? So I decided to do a master's instead, and took a huge risk, and actually got a massive loan to do it, a huge loan to do it. And I just felt like I'd just taken the biggest risk, and was it all going to pay off? And when I first started working in the industry, I was paid 150 quid a week, cash in hand. You know, and luckily my husband, well, my boyfriend at the time, was able to support me through those first years when we were absolutely stony broke and living in a disgusting basement flat in London. It was all just really grim. But, you know, it was what I had to do to get there. And that was my biggest worry, was that it was very much a, you know, bank of kids with the bank of mum and dad could afford it, but I wouldn't be able to. But I somehow managed to do it. And then it's all been fine. But I think that really kind of, it did kind of put me off. And I think it still puts people off a little bit now. Even though salaries are better, entry salaries are better than they were, I still think that that's a concern for a lot of young people coming in with a lot of debt from uni.
Yeah, they're really good points. I know there's been some campaigns to try and avoid kind of these prolonged periods of either not being paid at all, you know, or these really crap salaries, and especially with the cost of living crisis and everything else going up. Jasmine, can I ask you now about your experiences?
Yeah, so I'm actually resonating with a lot of what's being said. I think what Layla said about the work-life balance, that's a big one. With me being not based in London, you know, I'm saving so much money on the commute and and the time spent commuting as well, because it's about 1.5 hours to 2 hours for me to get into London. And then you've got long days in the office, and that's the long hours and the burnout. And, you know, on my current gig, for example, I am working alongside a co-first assistant, and we're splitting days in the office. And, you know, she has 2 young girls, so she needs to be able to, you know, arrange childcare, and we can, you know, share those days in the office. And equally, when I'm working from home, I can take my dog for a walk, you know, in the national forest on my lunch break. And, you know, we all know, you know, working in post-production, sitting in front of a screen for 8 hours a day in a dark room, like, you need to get away sometimes, and just being out in nature, you know, has so many health benefits. And, you know, it's really important to prioritize your mental and physical well-being, especially in an industry and, you know, in post-production where we're sat at computers for you know, most of the day.
Oops.
Actually, it's actually interesting. Sorry, it's interesting to say, I'll barge in because it's interesting to hear all these stories, because it suddenly kind of all comes back about all the different barriers that, you know, same for me. I was sort of a mature student when I came over, because I came over in 21. I was 21 when I came over to England. So I didn't know the landscape. I didn't know anybody. So if you're from a background where filmmaking hasn't been in the family, for a start, you need to start building the network, and somebody has to advise you and mentor you to a certain extent. That's why I'm very sort of hands-on with the students, and I try to sort of get them into meeting people and getting to know people. But it's very interesting because it's the same stories, like how little you get paid, the jobs to start with are very irregular if you're doing it freelancer, so it's very tough, and then all the boys clubs and the big pints of lagers, and, you know, going to the pub, you know, if you miss those, you miss networking opportunity. And at the same time also, you're not drawn into these conversations because they're all kind of very male orientated. So you may have other interests and so on. But it is, I mean, I can see that it is changing a lot, very much.
Thank you, Stefania. Renee, what's been the sort of barriers for yourself?
Hi, yeah. I was thinking about what everyone was saying, because I think mine have actually come quite late, I think, because it has been in the childcare realm, because I'm a single parent, which I did choose to be. And I really, you know, my daughter just got, well, I mean, I was sort of focusing more on the production side for a while when she was little. And then with lockdown and the dawn of the remote editing, I suddenly started to do a lot more editing again, to just seem like, suddenly it seemed like, oh, I can do it easily, you know. So that's made a huge difference. And all the things like being able to actually you know, that you crave to have the time to actually just spend quietly and craft the edit. I find I get a lot more of those, just having to just do things at strange hours, you know. So that those few hours that I might do, I don't know, super early in the morning or something like that, I find actually just make a really big difference. And that now when I do travel in and out, it seems to me like a bit of a waste of time. Like, why did we factor that into already, you know? But obviously sometimes it is obviously good to go in and work with everyone, certain parts of the edit. But I think that has been the most sort of difficult thing, because, you know, my daughter did get really stressed out when I started going into town editing, because she wasn't particularly used to it. And I organised childcare and everything really well, but you know, it doesn't. If you're stressed, it's, you know, really horrible. So she's getting a bit older now, so it's a bit easier. So that was one of the main things that came to mind. I don't know. There's a few moments, you know, when I think back that there's nothing continuous, if you like, but there are a few moments where, I don't know. I was just trying to think. Just something Zeb said. I remember somebody saying to me, "Oh, you'll," I think it was like, "Yeah, you're not an editor, or you'll never be an editor." I remember someone saying something like that to me when I was in my 20s, and I thought, I don't know, why not? You know, I thought it was really weird. I never knew why he said that. And I don't know if it had anything to do with gender or what. But anyway, I guess I, you know, set out to prove him wrong. But yeah, so I can't think of anything else particularly at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, that's you know, I mean, it's really interesting, and it sort of brings us around a little bit to kind of COVID and what everyone's experience have been, whether they've been good or bad, because we've been talking a bit about work-life balance. So, you know, during COVID, women's lives were supposed to be a lot more impacted, according to the studies. So, what was it like for you, working or not working, and for those of you who've got kids also balancing that? Who wants to kick off about life in COVID as a editor or post-production supervisor?
Always happy to chat. I'll go.
Good. Yeah.
It feels, I mean, I was feel really guilty saying it, but COVID was brilliant for my career and family, for work-life balance for me. If I'm honest, I've never been healthier in terms of, I now run and I haven't got the guilt. I spend time with my family. I take them to school. Do you know what I mean? I walk to school instead of throwing them at someone else to take them. You know, that panic has gone. I was really lucky that my work didn't really stop. It stopped, you know, momentarily, but I was able to get back into it. I was working with a current affairs team, and that kind of TV doesn't stop. News and that sort of thing just kept going. So I was already set up to work from home. I'd been trying to get companies to let me work from home for years since I had my first child. And suddenly, so I was ready to go. I was like, this is great. I can prove my point. And I did. And so it changed. You know, I've been able to carry on. I've been able to continue with my networks, and I speak on a lot of panels, and I carried on meeting people, and I got a lot more involved with talking to people online and through organisations like British Film Editors. It's been that the edit community has never been so open and communicative as it has been since, you know, all of a sudden we had the glass of wine evenings, the virtual glass of wine evenings, and kitchen lunchtime meetups, and suddenly I was able to talk to editors who I looked up to, but they're there and they're online and they're all chatting, and it's just, so it's changed that, it's opened it up, balanced it out, and I speak to so many more people who, you know, who will contact me online, and I can just have a quick chat with them without having to go, great, I'll meet you in my lunch break if I get one, and we'll trek across Soho and we'll do that. It's all, you know, yes, it's a shame that we're all stuck in front of a screen, but that side of things has been brilliant. And so now when I do go in, I am lucky. I'm working on a great production at the moment where I can pop into the edit if I want to, and it's a treat now. I pop into Soho once a week or once every 2 weeks, and I make all my plans to meet people who want a lunch or have coffee, and it's a day out, and I'm not so stressed. And like I say, my kids, my oldest one, I used to leave the 60-hour week, was very normal. So I used to leave at 7:30 in the morning and get back about 9. I can't believe that I did that for months on end. Whereas my 3-year-old, if I leave the house now, she's like, oh, you go out of the house sometimes. And it's like, yes, I do. And so that she's never, you know, they've never had it so good. I'm around all the time. Like, I'm here in the morning. I still have to have people look after them sometimes when I'm in the house with them, because I can't just put them on Nintendo Switch all the time. They would love that, but I feel then the mum guilt comes back. But so yeah, for me, that flexibility has been amazing, and the fact that we've proven that we can do that, which means that it's not just parents. There are other reasons you don't want to be stuck in a room somewhere waiting for notes to come in, sitting there waiting, when you could be at home with your own fridge, putting a load of laundry on, or like I say, having a run. So I think for me, it's been quite good.
Brilliant, thank you, Zeb. What about everyone else? I know everyone's experiences will have been, you know, very, very different during COVID. Jasmine, can I? Oh, sorry, Layla, were you going to say something else?
Oh, sorry. No, you go ahead. Come back to me later.
Don't worry, Layla, mine's going to be short and sweet. It's just to say that I completely agree with everything that Zeb said. Being able to kick off an export and, you know, go and do some cooking or put your dinner on. I remember, I think it was just before COVID hit, so I think it was around March 2020. I was on a gig and I was literally days in the office, commuting down to London every day. And we were kind of, I think, late into fine cut. So the editors and the directors were cracking on. They didn't really need us there, 8 hours a day. If they needed an export kicking off, it was right at the end of the day, which now we know we can do, remotely, or, and I think, COVID has just, as Zeb said, it's, you feel guilty saying it was good, but it's helped, I think, us realize that we can work remotely or even hybrid. Like I said, I go into the office a couple of days a week. And it's just, I think if productions are willing to accommodate that flexibility, then it helps all of us, that work-life balance.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Jasmine. Layla, what's it been like for you?
I was right in the middle of delivering a HBO series when COVID hit and we were all told to go work from home. We didn't have a plan, and we didn't have remote systems set up in order to keep going and keep delivering. But HBO needed us to deliver. It had an air date and we had to keep going. So we had to figure all of that out. And the entire post-production team, by that point we'd locked picture, and we'd already mixed a couple of episodes, so we had set the tone and the look and all of that, which was really helpful, but we still had quite a lot of episodes to actually physically deliver. So we switched everyone out to remote working. We were one of the first shows to do Zoom ADR, which was fun, and we were sending out microphones to actors' houses and all that kind of thing. A lot of the stuff we were doing at the time was very challenging, but we did it. But for me, the hardest part in that was that there was so much to do to keep moving forward. I was working 16 hours a day. I was working all the hours I was awake and trying to juggle the joke of trying to also homeschool. And my kids didn't get properly homeschooled in the first lockdown. There was no way I could deliver that show and homeschool my kids, and my husband's got a really full-on job as well. So that was really challenging, and we felt really guilty. And they watched a lot of TV, and they went on the trampoline a lot. That was really tricky, but we did it, and we kind of, it was groundbreaking in many ways what we managed to achieve. So longer term after that point, I was then unemployed for 5 months. Because obviously all the work stopped. So that was also a blessing and a curse. Financially not great, but it was amazing to spend all that time with my kids. I loved that. And then I got back into work, and and then it was all fine. But I think that was the most challenging thing, was trying to juggle the homeschool part of it and keeping those kids entertained whilst delivering the show. But I think in the longer term, the hybrid, the fact that we've proved that can work and everything can still keep moving forwards, and people's mental health is better because they've got that balance, has been really, really good. And I hope that we can all continue to work like that, particularly for parents, I think, but for everyone really, because we all have lives outside of work. And I think an editor said to me, a very good, amazing editor said to me once upon a time, that if we don't have lives outside of work, how are we supposed to tell stories? How are we supposed to creatively have anything to bring to the table? If all we do is sit in front of screens and have no lives. So yeah.
That's a great quote. I love that. Yeah, definitely. And can really sympathise and empathise with the old trying to homeschool whilst really just putting the TV on for children to watch. Yeah. So how about, would anyone else like to say about and COVID and experiences during COVID?
Also, can I just say that I echo what Zeb said about the amount of information that came out during COVID was absolutely amazing. And I actually think, thinking back when I was, somebody put in the chat that the software is really expensive to keep up, your skills and everything. And when I came out of university at the time, Avid was about 90 grand to buy a system. So either you worked in an environment where you had access to keep on learning and training and stuff, or you were basically just not be able to keep up. I really had to make a huge effort to keep on getting involved in projects in order to just keep training. But also being involved in projects sometimes that I didn't want to be involved in, or they were not paid or paid badly, just to, to make my names and just continue to work. But when COVID started, a lot of this, I suppose, information about how to use software in a particular way, the workflows, how to, editors sharing their skills, their experiences, it just came online. And I think, that was so beneficial. I got my students to join BFE precisely because I thought, well, this is what they need to hear this, because it kind of demystifies the process, first of all, and it just demystifies what an editor is, or that they're also human beings, and they joke and they're funny and they love talking about their job. So they become a little bit more approachable. And so the whole idea of networking becomes easier for people because they become familiar with people online, and there's that little distance so they can chat. And then they meet in person later on. I've seen it happening all the time. So the relationship is already there. So that, for me, it was tough teaching AVIT or teaching anything to do with practical things like that on, and I was working flat out. We all know that it was very, very challenging to teach something that's so practical and that requires you to sometimes troubleshoot there and then online, with sometimes connections that were kind of very weak and so on. So we did, I'm sure everybody's experienced those.
Thanks, Stefania. I was just going to we've had some interesting questions being asked by audience members. So just listen out for this one and see if anyone wants to answer this. So Selena asks, women helping women is also an issue. So I was really happy to join this call. There are enough women in the industry that can make a change, but when they get to a place where they can help, they for some reason are not seen to be. I would like to ask the panel what they think. So women helping women, have you found that that you've had a useful network of women, that women have been the people who have supported you or mentored you, or have you found the opposite? Anyone dive in? Holly.
So I think women can help women, but the people that are in power are the men. So we kind of have to put the onus on them. I think it's great that we're doing these things and we're helping each other out. And whenever I have an opportunity to hire someone, I will always choose a woman over a man, and I don't care. But, it's up to men to make this change as well. Where's them in this conversation, I guess?
Yeah, really good point, Holly. Yeah, sorry, who was... So go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, one of my, I feel like I've had quite a lot of support from production managers, female production managers in the past. That's been really really great. So just offering me work or putting me forward for work when I was much younger. So that's been good. Obviously, there aren't so many women editors, but it's been really sorry.
I was just going to say, I think I must be very lucky, because I feel like I've worked with quite a lot of women editors, and I'm so shocked that it's only 17%, because I feel like most of the series that I've worked on, it's not always been exactly balanced, but there's certainly been at least one female editor on the team. I must say, there was one show that I worked on last summer, and there was a Zoom call, and I was actually quite shocked, because I found myself in the middle of this sea of faces, and it was all men, and I was literally, I realized I was the only woman in the team of editors and assistant editors, and but that was the first time that's ever happened to me, really. So I think I've been quite blessed to work with a lot of female editors. From a post-production point of view, I think we're also very lucky, and it's really positive, because it tends to be more of a female orientated career, post-supervision, post-coordination and post-producing, although that's changing, and we are seeing a lot more guys getting into it. And I think there's an appeal there because of the technical side as well. So it's starting to get a bit more balanced, but I'd say it's probably the other way, and it's probably 17% men you know, a much higher proportion of women. But what I would say is that that group of largely women is incredibly supportive, and we have an amazing community and network in the post-production community in the UK, where we all actively support each other, advise each other, give references. We have like a email network. We're always sharing knowledge and information and recommending people and stuff like that. And there's a fantastic website. Somebody who I work with very closely on an NFTS course set up this fantastic website, which is like a hub for post-production, for editorial, for VFX, for post supervisors. And she's really hit it at the right time, and partly at that time when COVID, it became really important, as Zeb was saying, about the community aspect online really flourished at that time, and I think that was a really good thing. So I feel like in post-production there's a lot of support amongst women, and I do a lot of training of women and men to kind of bring them up in that career path if that's what they want to do. And every job I do now involves quite a bit of training of teams, and that's like bringing up the next generation of people you know, who are taking on these jobs. So I feel quite blessed, and I think we're quite lucky in the post supervising side of things. And
I'm just going to add to that as well, as I feel that it's not just post-production, but I think anywhere, I've been really lucky in my career that I found a lot of a really strong female network anyway. I mean, I was really fortunate, and I took part in the Women in Film and TV mentoring scheme, which instantly gave me, you know, 20 women from right across the industry who I couldn't believe to this day. From that, I did that in 2016. To this day, they are my biggest, you know, cheerleaders and supporters, and we all raise each other up. And having them in your pocket, practically, they're all on WhatsApp all the time for every decision you ever have to make. But having that network has been so important, and so just really gives me a good grounding for when I go out and about in this industry. And being part of Women in Film and TV, for me personally, and I hope for other members, and I'm an ex-board member as well, so slightly biased, but also just as a member, that whole walking into a room where they do, you know, they would do events, they do networking, but they also do events about post-production or about production or different things. And walking into that room of just women who aren't all from the same area of the industry, there's a different energy to it. Again, you know, you can deny it, but it's fact. You walk in, it's a very different energy. The egos are very different. It's really, really supportive, and having that spread so that then I go to another event and there'll be a group of women who I've seen at these events, and you do get to know people, whether it's online or in-person events. You do see the same faces over and over again. And there are many different events I've been to where women will go up and go, oh yeah, I've seen you at this, and there aren't many of us here, and it's noticed. And so having that strength all the time, championing each other and raising each other up. And I agree, there probably are women who don't seem to be helping. I like to give them the benefit of the doubt and think maybe they have a newborn or a parent they're caring for, and they just don't have the time, or their job is at the, you know, final deadline or whatever. But I think the majority of women, and hopefully people in anyway, if you reach out to them, will respond positively if they have the time and if they can. So yeah, I want to say I will. I don't know if that's opening myself up to something, but I try. But I think that, yeah, I think there are a lot of really great, strong female networks out there to just reach out to.
Yeah, and can I say, I think that with BFE as well, although I suppose the gender ratio is probably similar to the industry in the BFE, there's a lot of, I think the proportion of women on the Zoom calls and, you know, the virtual glasses of wine and everything is very high, which is fantastic, you know. So I'd highly recommend those to everyone, male and female.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to take another question now. So Kimberly has asked, where do you think the industry is at now concerning the male dominance, and where do you think this is heading in the future? Do you think there are additional barriers for women of colour? What would you recommend to overcome these issues? And Jasmine, do you mind if I come to you, because I know you also run Black Women in Post-Production as a network.
Yeah, of course. So I think the first question in terms of male dominance, I think the industry is still white male dominated. And I think it is improving, but slowly but surely it is. In terms of additional barriers for women of colour, I think there are. I think unconscious bias can play a part. And the way to kind of tackle that is through changing kind of recruitment practices. So, you know, if it's blind recruitment, if you're redacting kind of names and, you know, gender and making sure there's no photo on there, and you're just judging, you know, these applications based on skills and experience, which is what it should always be about. It shouldn't be about, you know, anything else. I think with BWIP as well, so just to explain a little bit more about that, it's a network for Black and Black mixed heritage women looking to work in post-production or who are already working in post-production. And it's the idea of a kind of safe, inclusive space, an online community where you can make those connections, and equally kind of on the flip side have recruiters and HODs and, you know, production companies kind of tap into that network directly and proactively diversify their workforce. So having kind of targeted diversity platforms like that to overcome that barrier is, I think, a great step in the right direction for post-production. Hopefully that answers all the questions.
I've noticed. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go on. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say I've noticed a lot more women in the machine rooms recently at post-production houses, which is really fantastic. And yeah, the unconscious bias, I've also noticed that, you know, when you phone, well, certainly when you used to phone the machine room, or you'd phone the post-production house from outside, people would assume that you were, you know, on the production team. You know, they wouldn't think that you were an editor. So that was always strange.
Just pausing because I keep on talking over people. Does anyone else want to answer that one? I mean, it's fantastic, Jasmine, that you've set up that network as well, because I think everyone's talked about, you know, the power of kind of women's networks to support each other, whatever, you know, whether it's getting jobs or, you know, just being there for each other, I think is really vital. So that's brilliant. Does anyone else want to answer?
Yeah, I think adding on to what Jasmine said, it's really important that these networks exist so that people can diversify their workforces. I found it quite tricky when I'm aware that some people are trying to diversify, and so they contact me because of my name, or because of, you know, they've seen my name on a list of black female or women editors, but they don't know what I work on. They don't know the kind of projects that I do. And it's quite obvious because I usually know who else they've called, and we're in very different areas, but they literally work, I know where I sit on that list and when they get to me. So that's quite a shame. But I do think it's great to have BWIP. I didn't realise we could shorten it like that. That's great to have BWIP. And also the Black British Post-Production Collective. And, you know, it's having these networks, and the more the merrier, having these networks and actually taking part in them, the strength in numbers. There really is. And so you're sharing, you know each other, and there are people at different levels within those organisations, and they speak to each other and they introduce people and they recommend. And it's a big thing that I heard I learned from an editor's Zoom in the States, actually, where they were talking about something that just seems so obvious. It is so much of who you know in our industry. So if you are involved in networking and you go along, you should take someone with you who isn't part of that network, or isn't, you know, the usual part of that network. So they become part of that network, and the next time they get invited and they bring someone along, and you grow it, but you grow it on purpose. You purposely go, who can I recommend? Who can I bring in? If you're asked to recommend people in post or any area, have a list of names in your pocket. Yes, have your favorite usual, you know, white male that you know is great, can do the job, but also have 2 other people who you know can do the job, but aren't those people. And I think that's a really, I think it's that real proactive thing. So I think it is hard. I think there is a lot of unconscious bias, and I think it's strength in numbers and raising people up all the time where you can.
Fantastic, thank you. And we're getting some lots of love there for BWIP in the comments as well. Jasmine. So it's great. I love your Instagram. Your job listings inspire us all, and I'm sure they result in great hires. So that's really good to know. So if you haven't, please check that out. I'm going to move on to the next question now. So Hilary has asked, I love hearing all of your COVID stories. I've always felt like editing can successfully be done remotely, but I have two questions. One, how do you create boundaries for yourself and work so that you guard that life-work balance? And the second question is, what is the one workflow tool that you have discovered to make remote working effective, whether it is to be a shared server or tricks to work with your team? Who would like to take one or t'other or both of those questions?
Oh, I don't like to be, but I am. The work-life boundaries, I'm not sure there are any. I think we all live at mummy's work now. I think it's out the window, but I have very strict rules about I take my kids to school, and I am very guilty of I'll stop and I'll pick them up and I'll give them dinner, and then I think, oh, I owe someone that time, which isn't always the case. And I will find myself editing deep into the night because if I'm honest, it's because I love what I'm working on and I really enjoy it. But there's part of me that's like, no, you must stop because it still works. So there's a real, there's a real challenge there. So I'm not sure I've got much balance, but I think it is really important to sort of set out what it is you do. Like, I don't lie about having to do those runs. I don't lie about the fact that I'm not really going to respond to your WhatsApp messages at 9 o'clock at night, except when I really enjoy what I'm doing and I really like the team, which is really difficult. But it's trying to set that up. I'm really strict on I used to really buy into that thing of putting on the bottom of my emails, I send these emails outside normal work hours, you respond when you can. But I realized, because I got so many of those myself, it still gave me anxiety because I've read the email to get to that point. So don't send it unless it's 100% urgent. Schedule send it for normal work hours, unless we've agreed that we're both going to be up till midnight because it's whatever. Schedule send those emails so that I'm not reading them when you know that I've officially logged off for the night. So that I think is my tip for working with teams, just not trying to put anxiety on other people.
I completely agree, and I actually say to people, like, if you really need to get hold of me, just phone me. Don't email me something that's urgent. Phone me, or text me if I'm on a day where I'm technically not working, which is basically never, but just get hold of me another way. But email, it will just get buried. So I think there's over the years, I think email practice has got pretty lazy as well, and I think that the sort of copying in of the world and everyone and all that kind of stuff is not particularly helpful. I find that working remotely, you have to work a lot harder to stay in the loop. That's one of the biggest things that I find. I've been working remotely for 2 years. And so I think that you have to really make a concerted effort. And it's not just about email, it's the Zoom calls and the phone calls and the follow-ups. And I think you have to be really on top of it to stay in the loop, because if you're not physically there, people can easily forget that you need to know this stuff. So I think that's key. In terms of working with my teams, which I have done, we've all been working at home, all the Google Docs and all that kind of stuff is all fantastic, working in all of those different apps. We've got all of that at our disposal, which is great. And, I've spent a lot of hours on Zoom. And, all the kind of different platforms that we have now, like Moxion and Evercast and Clearview and all that stuff has been really great. So, but you need good internet. And in COVID, when I was trying to deliver that show that I was working on, I basically had to sit next to the modem, which was in my utility room on top of the washing machine. So I pretty much did all my reviews next to the washing machine. So if you don't have good internet, then you're pretty stuffed. So yeah, having good internet's key for all that.
I realised that when I tried to watch some rushes on holiday, thinking I could totally multitask. Hotel Wi-Fi is nowhere near as strong as mine. It's like, Oh, okay, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Great. Anyone else with any tips or advice? Holly, how do you manage?
I think it's all about, as an assistant, like your relationship with your post super. So it's like being like, you know, if you have something on that week, if you have like a football match you want to watch or a cinema trip, just being like, that night I'm going to have to leave early, I hope that's okay. And as long as you're clear with them, they'll be clear with you. Same with editors, you know, as long as you're communicative, I think it's okay. And also, if you are contracted to work 11 hours in a day, don't work over that. You just go, you know, if you want me to work longer, I'm sorry, you know, I'm not contracted, you know, I'll work tomorrow, I'm happy to work tomorrow morning. And like, if you know, if you've got a doctor's appointment, just say I'll stay later that day. It's just, yeah, being open and being communicative, I think, is the best thing. And you can, assistants, if you need to leave at the end of the day, you can send things from home, which I think is great now. You know, that change that you're able to work remotely is really useful. But yeah, just be completely open with people. I think that's great.
Fantastic. That's really good. I noticed we have quite a few questions, so we might pop on to the next one now, which is Victoria asks how or where from can we learn, so where can we learn the skills to start as edit assistants or post entry roles? I studied editing and post for both undergrad and masters with good grades, decent editing, but seemed to still find getting rejections from edit assistant or trainee edit assistant jobs due to lack of skills. So any advice then on how to get started and what kind of skills people need?
I think you have to know Avid. I don't know if that was in there, but you have to know Avid. There's no point trying to apply for jobs without that, which obviously is an issue because Avid does cost. I think it's about 40 quid a month now, but just understanding the very basics of that. If I was looking for a trainee, I would need them to at least understand how to use Avid. But it's also being on the Facebook groups. I don't know if you're aware of those, but there are some fantastic Facebook groups out there. One is called Assistant Editors London, if you are based in London, which is really great. And I will always check on there if I'm ever looking for anyone. And there's great like skill sets, always have great links on how to find stuff. Is it called Skill Set now? I think that's what it's called. And they've got great training schemes for you. And there's also a document somewhere, I'm sure we can send a link somehow, of people you can contact that are first assistants and second assistants. So if you're looking to be a trainee, you're best off looking at assistants rather than editors, or even PPSs as well, because those are the ones that will be looking for trainees. And there's a list online of like their names and email addresses, so you can contact them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think off the back of what Holly said, so I studied digital film production at Rave, but I didn't learn Avid. So I left uni not knowing Avid. And the only way I learned it was through a trainee scheme and being kind of on a placement where you were expected to know Avid. And so I learned it as a trainee. I think there are other routes in. Trainee schemes are great. I can highly recommend kind of the Screen Skills Trainee Finder scheme, but there's also starting out as a runner at post houses. And then working your way up that way as well. That's a really common route in to kind of learn and gain those skills. And then again, it just comes back to networking because the industry recruits through networks. So like Holly said, reaching out to firsts and seconds, and that's really easy to do now. You know, stalking them on IMDb of your favorite shows and finding out who worked on, you know, who was the first and second on that and who the editor was on that, and reaching out to them as well and asking them for advice.
Fantastic tips there. So that's really, really helpful. So I hope that's helped Victoria, and good luck. Brilliant. Stefania, you wanted to say something as well. Yeah.
I just wanted to add something. So if you have never used the trial version of Avid, there's always a month. Usually these software has a month. They have a month trial version, so you can always download the version for a month and you can use it for free. And the same thing for LinkedIn Learning. They've got courses on, you know, online, and you can find all sorts of things online to learn this stuff, even just to get familiarize yourself with the software. It's very useful, because then you kind of can see what's required.
Is Avid First any good for any of that? Does that still exist?
Avid First, as far as I know, it does. It's not good if your work, I think it would be good enough if you've never seen Avid. It's got exactly the same interface, and you can actually edit with it and everything, but it just doesn't go into the higher level workflows.
Yeah, I learned the Avid from a manual. Going through the manual, I think it is definitely worth getting your hands on it and practicing.
Me too. I was shown Avid for an hour and then given a book. But now there's loads of resources online, so it's just about finding the right one. If you actually go to the Avid website, there's so much there already.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. There's kind of loads of video tutorials. Avid have loads of kind of tutorials on YouTube as well. So, yeah.
I'm just going to post another website, which is more post-production orientated, but it's the one I was mentioning earlier. But a lot of editors and assistant editors are coupling onto this as well, because there's lots of free tutorials to do with all different types of elements of post. It's called postsuper.com, and there's a whole knowledge base on there, and it's a community hub, and they're starting to advertise jobs and things like that as well. So I'll post that there. That's quite handy to sign up to, and there's lots of events that they do and networking things there. So, and that website will link you to lots of other websites for training and webinars and things like that.
Yeah, it's really good. I always tell my students to go in there as well and look.
Oh, good.
Really, really thorough. Yeah, there's lots of good stuff. But again, a lot of this stuff came about during COVID, a lot of these things, and it's fantastic. You know, there's so many resources out there. Also, if you are starting off, Eleanor Adler has a website. I don't know if you, what is it? It's called Making the Cut. What is it? Oh, no, EleanorAdler.com, I think, isn't it?
Yes, I think, yeah, she has a blog. I think it's eleanoradler.com, but she also runs a Facebook group called Making the Cut in Post. And there's loads of kind of entry level and kind of trainees on there. So that's a great group to join, because I think they host kind of socials as well. So you can network with other people at the same level.
So fantastic.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and I think the Lightworks, one of our sponsors, the BFE sponsors, being they're launching it professionally, aren't they? Relaunching it, so you can always get in there early and see how that's being, you know, how that's rolling out now. We had a demo on it recently and it looked quite fun.
Brilliant. And someone else, Lorna, has asked about, she's first of all says amazing and inspiring to see so many women in post-production gathered here in the virtual space. So thank you, Lorna, for that. That's great. And she has a question. She makes corporate films and loves editing. Can the panel suggest any places she can explore finding sort of editing freelance jobs? I mean, anything to add to already? I know everyone's talked about and given some fantastic advice. Anything else to add for someone who might be doing corporate and wants to build up on their editing skills?
I mean, it probably seems really obvious, but it's the Facebook groups again, like I Need an Editor and places like that, where people post jobs and find work that way. There seem to be quite a number of corporate type of roles there. Anyone else got any other suggestions? I'm trying to think where I see them.
On LinkedIn as well, there's often corporate work.
Fantastic. And Lorna, I would also go and check out the other things that are posted in the chat, because there's quite a lot of resources there now, which is brilliant. So thank you very much, everyone, for that. And then the next question is, how did you make the jump from assistant editor to editor? Did you find it difficult, and do you think the gap is growing? So a very interesting question.
I I mean, I think I was very lucky for the time that I was in the industry, because I started as a trainee. It was the sort of a natural progression thing for me, not that natural, and I did watch a lot of people, guys, leapfrogging me to get there, but I think I want to be really positive and say that the gap isn't growing, but it seems really quite tricky to make the leap from what I see. Other people can tell me otherwise. I think you have to find someone who you get on really well with and keep working with them and get your opportunities that way. Seems to be the route that I see, people who are going to let you cut a little bit. I don't tend to have, because I work a lot in documentary, I don't tend to have dedicated assistants as often. But when I do, I'm really keen to sort of say, do you want to take this part? Do you want to take, you know, if I'm working on a US show and there's snap-ins, do you want to take those? And I'll oversee them and hopefully give some feedback, and then feed back to the showrunners or whoever and say, this person's done a great job. I think you can use them to do your promo or to do something else. And I think that's really useful, but it does take getting to know someone, which tends to mean you've got to have been around them or have been really helping them out a lot, so that they will offer, and letting them know that you're up for doing that. It's that same thing of creating your opportunities. It does seem like a busier or tougher industry than it was when I started, unfortunately.
I think I'm seeing a lot of assistant editors stepping up recently, which has been really lovely to see, because the industry has grown and it's been quite busy. But I know historically that leap is really hard. It's a really hard leap to make. And I've had quite a lot of assistant editors come to me and say, I'm so sorry, I've been offered an editing job or an assistant editing job and I'm going to have to leave. And I'm like, that's great, go, take it, don't feel bad, like literally take that opportunity and take it now, we'll find somebody else, because those opportunities are quite random, they're hard to judge when they're going to come along. It could just be because somebody suddenly is taken off ill and they know the person's been able to do it because the editor's been helping nurture the firsts coming up, and they're giving them opportunities to cut, and it's like, well, we need someone and you're right there, so let's give this person a go. And sometimes it's just when you're in a challenging situation, those opportunities come along. But I do think at the moment I have seen quite a lot of first step up, which has been really, really lovely. And then now there's a hole to fill. So all the seconds are moving up to being first, and there's like a new generation of assistant editors. And so there is a lot of opportunity around, but I think it's such a nerve-wracking thing because it's such a different skill set as well. Yeah. From being an assistant editor to an editor, it's a very different role, and I do think that yeah, it's mentally quite a hard leap as well, and yeah, but it's nice to see that is happening, and that's been the benefit of the industry growing so rapidly as well.
Yeah, there do seem to be a lot of like you say, it's all grown so quickly, and I think if you can get yourself into a position where you're ready to step up confidence wise and you know what you're capable of, I think it's really important. It's like I always say to people, you know, you've got to take those opportunities, and you've got to be you know, you've got to know confident in what you know and confident in what you're able to fake, like, so that you know you could get in there and get that opportunity and run with it. Know when it's time to ask a question, like if you can't do something, be honest, you know when you can Google something, but you know your stuff, but also there's that thing, isn't there, of you know, this is bringing it back to women in the industry again, where if a guy knows, you know, a low percentage or something, I can't remember the stats, I'm terrible at this, they will go for that job even though they're not fully qualified for it, whereas a woman will go, I'm only 95% qualified, I'm not going to take that risk. And it's that think like a man thing, it's that go, do you know what, I can do that. It's like for years I didn't apply for jobs that involved needing Photoshop skills, and then I realized that, to be honest, in 20 years I'm not a Photoshop expert, and in that time I think I've only been asked to use it twice, and both times I asked someone else to do it for me, and it wasn't the end of the world, I couldn't do it. But I missed out on opportunities because I was so scared of saying, oh, I'm not an expert at Photoshop. Whereas it's just sort of going, yeah, but I can do the job. I know I can do the job. So it's that think like a man, go in, and if you know you can do it, then step up, be ready for that opportunity and step up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also think there's some mileage in doing other courses as well that aren't related, like maybe to do with time management or public speaking or team leadership, you know, all those kind of other skills which can be really useful. Like I done a team leadership and management course years ago, and in Panorama, when we started working in teams more to get fast turnarounds done, and working out how best to do that on the Avid, multiple suites over a very short period of time to get something out. Those skills really came in useful, and so I think there's other ways to just sort of fine tune what you've got to offer as well, which will just give you a bit of an edge, I think.
I don't think there are enough courses in soft skills and leadership training and stuff specifically catered to the film and TV industry, and I think that that's a gap that needs to be addressed. And I know that people are looking at that, but I do think that a lot of I've just learned on the job all the way through. I've never really had any official training at all, apart from that master's, which was a very long time ago and not really relevant to what I do today. And I do think there is a gap there that we do need to look at industry wide to support people. So yeah, I'd love to do some leadership skills training and things like that. So
we might have to take you up on that, Layla. Yeah.
No, I'm the one that needs the training.
It's one of the downsides of COVID is that because we are all remote, there are skills that people aren't getting because you're not seeing people, you're not sat next to them. So much of editing or post-production is people skills. It's how do you talk to the person in the room, whether it's a client or a colleague or whatever, and those are skills that I think it's like you say, those soft skills that we're not getting. But these are things as well, when you have these networks, you do meet other people who are going through it and you can speak to them. And I know, again, back to women in film and TV, when I used to go to their, I'd go to a pitching session as an editor. I never have to pitch anything, but I realized I'm pitching myself for a job, or I'd just be in the room and I'd understand, or just to sort of, it's where you say about, doing other courses, learning what else goes on and where you fit in that system, which is why having networks that go beyond your area of your specific area is so important, because working out where you fit and how to talk to different people who have different concerns about the production and what they need to get out of it. Once you've learned what they expect and you've learned how to talk to people and just to be nice, I think it's just so, you just get so much more done if you're nice. It's much more help if you're nice to people, and you can, but you don't learn that. You don't learn that when we're all sat on Zoom at home.
One question. Oh, sorry, Renee. Come on. Yep.
So I was just going to say, I think as well, I think when you start working with new people you don't know, I always find it's very different, because obviously they've got no idea what you can and can't do really, and so it's always quite sort of stressful. I always find that when I'm with new people, I just write really serious, because I just feel like you've got to prove yourself all over again. And you just, part of you just wants to be working with the person that you've just worked with for ages, and you just get on and do the film, and at the same time it's fantastic to have the opportunity to work with someone new and get to know them, and to do something different and work on this film, but there's always that sort of moment where you're just sort of feeling like oh no, I've got to sort of, there's just some extra element that's I've got to kind of produce to be able to make just to get on with the basic job. And that's reminds you of what it's like when you haven't got the people that you're used to working with a lot, not in that fortunate position, and yeah, it is tough trying to prove yourself and focus on the job as well, and manage everything that's going on around you.
I think that's so key, and I think that as freelancers we have to deal with that every single time, and I think that's why often as freelancers we gravitate to the same trusted faces or the same people we've worked with before, because those networks and those people that you've figured out, that you've got a shorthand and you can just slip back into a working relationship that that you're going to get it done and you're going to have fun doing it. And I think when you're working with new people, that sort of extra level of anxiety of having to prove yourself, even though frankly you shouldn't have to really prove yourself. And partly it's probably a self-doubt thing, but partly, it's quite a judgy industry. People are quite judgy. And I think that we all feel that a little bit. So I completely echo what you just said, Renee, about that whole having to prove yourself all over again thing. It's kind of silly, but it's there. It's always there. And then about halfway through, there'll be a crisis or there'll be something, and then you'll very much prove yourself, and then everyone will be, you know, relying on you to get it through.
There's always a turning point. Well, you know, you hope that continues, but there's always that turning point, and where everybody's like, okay, you know, but it's just waiting for that for us all to get there,
to kick in. Yeah. yeah. It's a whole extra level of stress in the freelance world. Yeah.
And what about the actual kind of craft of editing, and be like from a female perspective, do any of you, or what do you think about as women? Do you feel like your choice of shots, of the storytelling, do you feel that might be different from a man? Holly, what do you think?
Yeah, of course I think women are better. You know, I totally think women are more empathetic and therefore can understand why you would choose a take over another one. I'm probably partial, but I don't know, I think, yeah, but that's just, you know, different people have different personalities, and it's not to say that all gender is the same, but yeah, I do think women have a very good eye for editing. I mean, it's shown, you know, if you look at the past and what huge directors have used, they've always gone for female editors because they are good at the job, I guess. Yeah, I think they're better suited for it.
So yeah, it's interesting actually. I did see on Twitter, I think it was through an organization called Edit Girls, which seems to be quite good on Twitter, that from Love Island, if anyone watches that, I think it was 19 editors, and none of them were female. So, and that's on a relationship show. So even if you're not a fan of Love Island, I thought that was quite an interesting one, and it raises the question, doesn't it, of what would, if a female, you know, especially on a show like that, because you're very close, you've got a lot of cameras, you're sort of, you know, what choice of shots would you be going for? Be quite an interesting kind of idea. Jasmine, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. That's one of the things I kind of love about editing, is that you can cut a sequence in so many different ways depending on who it is that's cutting it. It's a difficult one to say where it's like a gender thing per se. And I did see that tweet from like Edit Girls and the 19 male editors, and you know, it's shocking as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. It's a difficult one.
It's sad to say, I did once work with an editor who worked in Love Island, and it's a very, very toxic environment that I don't think many women would want to work in. So I think the reason why they choose to have 19 men is because you can be working from midnight until 5 a.m. with horrible producers shouting at you going, we need to make this woman look like more of a trash or whatever. You know, it's not exactly a particularly uplifting for women's show. So it doesn't surprise me that you've got male editors cutting together these, you know, obscene scenes. Whereas you look at something that may be a documentary about like abortion, and therefore you're going to have a female editor on that, where you need to tell a message that is going to be told by a woman. Love Island, I don't think, is a great representation of gender.
Women have got maybe more taste. Yeah. Great. Okay, well, we're actually running out of time. It's been such good sort of speaking to everyone, and I mean, we haven't got time to answer everyone's questions, but it would be great if we could go round and perhaps everyone could sort of give one piece of advice, because there's quite a few people I think on here that are, you know, trying to break into the industry or move up and progress. So any last words of wisdom from each of you? Zeb, can I start with you?
Yes, I guess for me it's just, you know, it's really tough, but I think you've got to find your tribe, find your people who you can uplift, who will uplift you. And just because it is, you know, you are going to cry your eyes out some days and tear your hair out, and the next day you'll be like, let's, you know, go out and celebrate because I feel like I've done my job really well. And it's ups and downs all the time. So if you can find people to take you through the highs and lows, I think that's really, really important. And it's not easy at all. There's no sugarcoating that. It's a really tough industry with really long hours. So you've got to try and set your boundaries where you can and get some fresh air whenever you can.
I completely echo what Zeb just said, and I think that I think you just be nice, be helpful, take every opportunity you get and see where it takes you. And I think take responsibility for building camaraderie in teams. You know, I really think that that's the thing that gets you through the hard times and the days when everyone wants to cry and run away because it's all just really frustrating. And I think that taking responsibility and being part of that is kind of really important as well, and uplifting other people on your teams, and you know, training other people where you can, and I think just get out into those communities, do that networking. Some people might find that really difficult to do and a bit cringy, but actually I think, you know, that's something you're going to have to learn to perhaps cope with and get on with. I used to be incredibly shy at these things and would hardly want to speak to anyone, but you get better at it, so just persevere.
Waiting to see who wants to go next. Stefania, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I think I'm just actually answering to one of the Q&A, because they're very much on this subject of, you know, what do I do if I'm just stepping up and, you know, I'm a bit anxious and blah, blah, blah. Just reach out to people that you know that who can support you. I think that's I think that, you know, what I've seen, especially the last couple of years, I've just seen people blossom just by and gaining confidence just by talking to other people, really. I mean, you obviously have to have the skills, but at the same time, it's about knowing that, hey, you know, if I don't know absolutely everything, it's okay, you know, I can actually ask, but I'm still capable, and I can, you know, it's about you having the courage to talk to people and finding your tribe, like what Zeb was saying, and just find out and reach out to them when you need them. I think that's really the best thing, you know, and don't be scared of that. You know, we work very much in isolation all the time, because we're kind of, especially editors, I think, but, you know, assistants or anybody, we're all kind of in a bubble, and then you're freelancing and you feel very unsure sometimes, because you think, oh, well, if I show that I don't know something, I might not get a job next time. But it's really just building up these networks and of support. It's very crucial, so that they can support you when you're actually moving up. You know, people who have those experiences, like Zeb, you know, she's been given lots of good advice here, or Renee, you know, just basically reach out and join some of the groups and participate, I think.
Thank you, Stefania. Jasmine, what would your words of wisdom be?
Yeah, I would say know your worth and know your value, and know that you have something valuable that you can bring to any team, and just be proactive in seeking those opportunities and putting yourself out there. And, you know, we always talk about networking as, oh, it doesn't have to be networking drinks in Soho. I'm so vocal about this on like the Do It platform, that it doesn't have to be that. And I think I've mentioned it earlier today that, you know, you can just reach out to people via email, via LinkedIn. Editors, I've noticed, are very active on Twitter. I think you said, Lucy, reaching out on Twitter. Twitter's a great platform, and Instagram as well. BWIP's very active on Instagram. So there's so many resources, literally at the tip of your fingers. So yeah, use those.
Yes, thank you very much. Holly?
Yeah, actually, Lucy once told me my final year at university, she said, reach out to an editor that you like. And it was Gary Dolner. And last year I got to work with him. And it was the most incredible experience. And it was all, you know, it was such a weird moment to be like, you know, I just reached out to him on Twitter and then I made it happen. These things do really work. And yeah, you don't need to be drinks in Soho. You just need to be right place, right time, and just be confident. You know what you're doing. Just, yeah, you're super valuable. Yeah.
Great to hear. I was a bit worried about what I might have said then.
That's brilliant. He's one of the loveliest editors in the world. So yes, that's
great. He's so lovely.
He's amazing. Brilliant.
And Renee?
Yeah, I would say go to the film festivals. There's DocFest coming up. I'd say edit, you know, edit short films, edit anything you can get your hands on, film things yourself and edit it on, you know, on your phone. That's all fantastic quality these days. Just, you know, actually do and think about what area you would love to be working in as well, so you can sort of, you know, focus on those editors and contacting those editors. Come to BFE Virtual Glasses of Wine, join BFE. Yeah, I mean, I think just, you know, be active and be on the platforms and, you know, be visible so we can see you.
Brilliant. Okay, well, that's all we've got time for this evening, but thank you so much to all our panelists. Wonderful advice, and really just shows that actually there's, you know, there may be a ceiling, but not here, and we're going to be breaking down all those boundaries for the next generation, so that we can have the gender parity that we want in all of the different sectors of film and television. And thank you so much for everyone for joining us this evening. I hope that was valuable. We will be sharing the recording as well, and yes, tweet. We've talked about Twitter, the hashtags, and well, we didn't do a hashtag, did we? But we've got our Twitter handles, and we'd love to connect. So thank you so much to everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Lucy. Lovely to meet everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
We might be able to stay on panelists for a moment. I don't know whether